Hey guys, it's Kimberlyn. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be showing you all of the books that I read in November, giving you guys my thoughts, my rating. I'm also going to be telling you guys my December TBR. Not really a strict TBR. I just got off my book buying ban. Slowly buying books yet again. My new self-discipline rule, not buying so many books at a time. I recently bought like 3 books. I'm not going to buy another book until those books get finished. That's like my new rule. I don't want to like overload my books and like go on a book buying ban again. Hated that so much because I felt so limited to the amount of books that I was reading. In November, I read 5 books, which is kind of like my average 5 to 7 books. This was like my last stretch of finishing all the books on my physical TBR. There was about 4 or 5 other books that were on my physical TBR that I didn't read. I'm actually giving those away. Without further ado, let's get started with the November wrap-up. So the first book that I read in November was The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This is a mystery book. I got this book maybe over the summer. I kind of just bought it for no reason. Like I wasn't even intrigued by the storyline of it. Honestly, before I found out that this was a mystery book, like I saw it on Book Talk and stuff, but I thought that this book was like a sad story. Cause doesn't it seem like it's sad? Like if you take the blood out, it seems sad. I don't know. This follows a married couple, Sarah and Adam. Sarah is this attorney, lawyer. Adam is this writer. Adam decides to go to their second home, this like cabin area. He tells Sarah that he's going over there to get some writing done, to get some inspiration, but in reality he's cheating on her. So he has a mistress and he's been with her for quite some time. One morning, Adam wakes up and he is arrested. The mistress, Kelly, has been murdered. Adam's only hope is Sarah. Sarah decides to defend Adam and be his lawyer, and she finds out that he cheated on her. Adam guilty? Is he innocent? Who done it situation. I rated this book a 2-star. This just was very predictable and it felt like it was just dragging on for too long. This is a short book, maybe this many pages too long. I could have found out what happened within like reading the first page or even the back of the book. I think like the reason why I kept wanting to turn the page was because I didn't want my theory to be right, and like the plot twist wasn't even like I was right. I think this is a good first starter mystery type book if you're trying to get into that. I do recommend it. It was just too predictable for me. So the next book that I read was The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This is the second book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I read the first one a couple months ago. Once Upon a Broken Heart was my first ever fantasy book that I've ever read, and this is obviously my second one. I don't know how I feel about this book, about this series in general. It's really easy to read and I love Stephanie Garber's like writing. Very little but very detailed enough to like you're really able to imagine it. Like everybody says, Alice in Wonderland vibes. Very magical, very fairy-like. This follows Evangeline and Jax. I can't really say too much about the second book because you have to read the first book if you haven't already, but the first book does follow Evangeline and Jax. Evangeline wants to marry the love of her life. Something happens and she can't, so she makes a deal with a fate or a fate. Jax, that deal causes a whole commotion and it leads into the second book, and I do want to read the third one just to finish the series. I don't know, I'm just not really into it, and I kind of was like forcing myself to read it at some points. This kind of like took up majority of my November to read and get through because I guess you can say I was getting bored of it, but like I was still loving it. I did rate this a 4-star, kind of leading from a 3.5 to a 4-star. The ending of this book really did get me. Ending half, I would say like the last 20% of the book, I was more engaged than the first 80%. That's kind of why I was a 4-star, and I really loved the writing. Like I said, I would love to read A Curse for True Love hopefully soon. Yeah, there was that. All of these books, by the way, have been in reading vlogs. Go watch any reading vlog that was posted in November and you will see more in-depth review on how I feel about any of these books. So the third book that I read in November was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is my third Emily Henry book. I was very excited to read this. Rated Beach Read a 5-star, and I rated People We Meet on Vacation like a 3-star. I knew that this one was either going to be a hit or miss, but I had high expectations for it, which I shouldn't have done. So this follows Nora and Charlie. Nora decides her and her little sister Libby are gonna go on this like vacation just to get away. So they go visit this small town, Sunshine Falls in North Carolina. They make like a bucket list of all the stuff that they want to do. Nora is also a literary agent, so her life is surrounded in writing and books. She also keeps bumping into this guy named Charlie, who's also a book editor. They kind of just like collide and bump heads every single time they run into each other, even prior to bumping into each other at the small town. It's kind of just like workplace rival to lovers type thing. I did not enjoy this book as much as I thought I was going to, and I'm really sad about that. I rated this book a 2.5 star. It felt like there was like no plot. It fell flat and was getting boring. It wasn't as entertaining as Beach Read. The banter just kind of saved it for me. Emily Henry's banter is always a plus. Wasn't my favorite, and I know that this is also a fan favorite of Emily Henry, but I don't know. Argue with your mom, because I pushed through. There is one book that saved the day, and that is Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I've been waiting to read this book for I couldn't even tell you how long. I love Lauren Asher. You guys know that. Loved the Dreamland Billionaire series. I was so excited to read her new series, the Lakefront Billionaire series. So this is another billionaire romance. This is the first book. The second book is coming out in June, I think. And what do you mean I have to wait until June to read that? This follows Julian and Dahlia, childhood frenemies, family friends. Their moms are like best friends. Julian is the billionaire. Dahlia has this interior design TV show. She comes back to Lake Wisteria, which is the same town where the last book in the Dreamland Billionaire series takes place. And look at all my tabs, like, oh, I just loved this book. Dahlia is just going through this really bad breakup with her ex-fiance. Julian's mom is like, you know what, you need to help her, like you need to just distract her. So Julian decides to like, you know what, I'll try to get her out of her creative rut. As soon as that happens, she can leave, because they don't like each other. They keep bumping heads. They make a deal with each other that they're going to renovate this historic house together. She's an interior designer and he's like a carpenter. They work together to do that, and it kind of just goes from there. And it was just so fun. Literally, the dedication of this book is for people who have a love language of words of affirmation. Me. It was just so fun to read, and like they were very like in tune with their emotions. They have a very good like understanding of why they personally feel a certain way, what to do with it, and they're both also dealing with grief. So they talk about grief a lot in this book. I enjoyed every single page, every sentence, every word that was on this book. Second chance romance as well, I forgot to mention that. I don't know, the romance in it was just so intriguing and so romantic and so just charming. I'm still deciding my rating. I'm like deciding between a 4.5. 4.75 seems too specific, so it's like either a 4.5 or a 5 star. I really don't know. It's like in between there. So maybe it's a 4.75. I don't know, it just wasn't exactly a 5-star read, but it wasn't a 4.5. I really like, I think about this book often after reading. Oh, sometimes people are worth the risk. Hold on. My rating is between there. We're just gonna say 4.75 right now. It'll probably change my mind later on that it'll be a 5-star, but I digress. We'll see. I'm so excited for the second book. That book is called Love Unwritten, and that follows Julian's cousin Rafa, and he's a single dad. I think that's gonna be following him and his son's nanny. The next and the last book that I read in November, I read on my Kindle, and that is The Night Shift by Annie Crown. I just needed like a fast, quick romance I can just fly through, and this one was like less than 300 pages. I had to keep in mind that this like from a Wattpad story, so it was gonna be cringy, but this follows a bookworm, a library nerd, somebody who just doesn't go out there as much. Her name is Kendall, and it also follows D1 basketball player, popular jock Vincent. They both go to the same university together. Kendall, she works the night shift at the library at school, and one night when she was working there, Vincent walks on in. He walks in with like an injured wrist. He has a cast on, so he's not out partying or doing any basketball practice that day. He is asking Kendall for like poetry recommendation for a class that he is in. That's how they meet, and like it kind of just starts off from there. You can kind of see the difference of how like she's very quiet, very innocent, and he's just like more out there. He kind of like challenges her to get out of her comfort zone and do things that she's like hasn't done as a innocent little girl. Okay, that as an innocent like 20-year-old. It's very cute. I know it's like Wattpad. There was like 3 ongoing chapters of just smut, and I just kind of had to like tap through that. It was pretty entertaining. I liked the first half more than I liked the second half. I did rate this a 3 stars, so I recommend it if you just want a fast-paced read that you need like a palate cleanser from a mystery book or a fantasy book, something like that. It would be very good. So yeah, that was all the books that I read in November. I would say it was a pretty good reading month. So now let's get into all the books that I want to read in December. So like I said, I don't have a specific TBR. I don't have any Christmas books that I want to read, so there's no holiday books that I'm going to mention. I don't know, I don't really like holiday books that much, and I just feel like most of the holiday Christmas books are just too long for what they need to be. They need to be at least like 200 pages, 230, 250 pages max. So I don't have any Christmas recommendations. I've been getting comments about if I have any, and I don't, so I just haven't read enough to give any recommendations. I know other people definitely have recommendations. You are just not gonna find any here. Something really just has to get my attention of wanting to read it. Every other romance Christmas story just seems just so basic, and I know that's kind of like what it is. All of the books, like I said, are just too long for what they need to be for a romance book, but I digress. So the first book that is on my December TBR is one of the books that I did buy after my book buying ban, and that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I've been seeing this all over booktube, all over book talk. I've been wanting to read it for literally the longest time. When I was at my peak of wanting to read this, I couldn't buy it. So this follows this girl named Clementine. I never knew her name. Everybody would talk about this book and nobody says her name, but this follows Clementine, and she starts living at her aunt's apartment. Her aunt has passed away, I think, and she's moving into the apartment. She sees a man standing in the apartment, but the guy, he lives 7 years in the past and she lives 7 years in the future. Her aunt has always said that the apartment is magical. I think it's gonna be so interesting to read. I hear a lot of good things about it, but I don't want to get my hopes up, because every time I get my hopes up on a book talk, booktube book, I get disappointed, but I digress. The next book that I hopefully want to get to reading in December is the second book in the Natural series, which is Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I read the first book, The Naturals, like right before my book buying ban, so when I really wanted to read the rest of the series, I couldn't. I also started watching Criminal Minds. I'm like really interested in wanting to read this because I know that this book, this whole series, kind of like, if you like Criminal Minds, you're gonna like this series. Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing is very easy, very YA. There's that. Okay, so the next book I'm like reading right now. My battery's flashing, are you for real? The next book I'm like reading as we speak, so I don't know if it'll count, but whatever. I'm reading The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. Thriller mystery book. It's where this girl, her father, he was a serial killer like a decade ago, and then years later she's this surgeon now, and one of her patients ends up getting murdered the same way that her father would murder people and put them in their basement. They're trying to follow along who's this copycat murderer. And yeah, so it's pretty interesting so far. This is my first Frida McFadden book. I'm gonna charge my battery and I will get back to you guys. We're back. The next book that I hopefully want to get reading this month is I want to start reading the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher, the series before the Dreamland Billionaire series, and I know that the writing is going to be very, very different. I heard people say that this is probably a series that you want to read like when you're first starting to get into reading, but I just jumped right into the Billionaire series. I do want to read that anyway because I just love Lauren Asher. I know the first two books a lot of people don't really like, but like the third and fourth one people do like. I think it'll just be like a good, quick, those books are not as long as her books now. I can just get started on that. I do want to read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I've been wanting to read that for a really long time, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so I can get to reading that too, but we'll see how I feel based off this book because I want to get into more mystery thriller books. I love Alice Feeney, so I do want to read more of her books as well, and I hear that Frida McFadden and Alice Feeney kind of have like the similar plot twist writing style. I want to read the second book in Chestnut Spring series, is Heartless. I am planning to read all of the Chestnut Spring series on my Kindle, and then if I really do enjoy all of them, then I'm gonna buy like the box sets. I didn't really like Flawless, so yeah, but I also, part of the reason why I didn't like Flawless was because it took me a really long time to read, and I was reading on my Kindle, but like that was one of the first books I ever read on my Kindle, so I was getting used to it. I also want to read Powerless by Lauren Roberts, but I don't know if I'm gonna get to that this month. Probably not, because I don't even have the book, so I'm trying to look at like books on my Kindle. I want to read Divine Rivals, trying to like jump into different fantasy, and I heard that one was really good. They have the whole Addicted series on here. Good grief. I do want to read Wildfire by Hannah Grace, which is the second book in the Maple Hill series. I read Icebreaker earlier this year, so I think that'll be so fun to just read that. I really liked Icebreaker, so look at all of these, like these covers. Hello. Like all of these books I kind of want to read. Like I don't have a specific TBR. Go with the flow. I want to read more books on my Kindle. Gotta get my money's worth. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Let me know how many books you read in November, which ones were your favorite. If you have Christmas recommendations, holiday book recommendations, let me know. Also, I'm not doing Vlogmas, but I'm pushing myself to post twice a week instead of once a week. So every Wednesday and every Sunday is my goal, but if not those days, then twice a week in general. I'm gonna try. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Bye!